Continue now at the top of Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph from Meseches Yoma. This is Yoma Daf 83a. On the previous summer, there was a pregnant woman on Yom Kippur, and the fetus smelled some food, and Rabbi Chanina said, whisper in her ear that it's Yom Kippur, but it did not work, and the woman still needed to eat on Yom Kippur. So Rabbi Chanina said about that, Zoru Rishoy Meirechem. Rashi over here explains, Zoru Rishoy Meirechem, Nasu Zorim V'nisnachru Lavim Shebashamayim. Those who are wicked, they become estranged from their father in heaven, even from the womb. Meaning he was saying that this indicates that this particular baby is not going to grow up to be a good individual, and indeed that's exactly what happened. Nafak Mino Shabsoi Otzar Piri. So Shabsoi, who was the Otzar Piri, he's the one that was born from that woman. Rashi over here says, what's Otzar Piri? Lahafkia Sha'arim. He used to hoard fruits in order to make the prices go up when it was a time of famine. Betanya ein Otzar Peres Beretz Yisrael v'chol davar shu chay nefesh lefisha mafkinas hasharim. There's a brisa that says you're not allowed to do that. So the point of this is that when he was a fetus already, Rabbi Chanina was able to see that he would not grow up to be a good person. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, quoting the Mishnah, Chol, if you have a person who is sick on Yom Kippurim, ma'achilin so al pi b'kiyin, so then you're allowed to give him food through experts, meaning you consult two doctors, and if they say that he needs food, then you're allowed to feed him. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Yanai says, Chola, when it comes to a sick individual on Yom Kippur, Omer tzarech, if the sick person says he needs food, V'rofe Omer eno tzarech, and the doctor says he does not need food, Shomin l'chola, we listen to the sick individual in this case. My timer, what's the reason? He quotes the pasuk, Levio deya moras nafsho, the heart knows when its soul is bitter. In other words, an individual knows when he really needs food. So the Gemara says, Pshit, isn't this obvious? So the Gemara says, no, Ma'u detema rofe kim leitzvei. I might have thought that the doctor knows more, so Kamash Malana comes to teach us, no, that we listen to the chola in this case. That's the first statement of Rabbi Yanai. Rofe omer tzarech v'chola omer eino tzarech. What if you have the reverse? The doctor says that he needs the food, and the sick person says he doesn't need the food. In this case, Shomin l'rofe, we listen to the doctor, we give him the food. My time, and what's the reason? Because we assume that because he's so hungry, a little bit of craziness has overtaken him. He doesn't realize how hungry he actually is. So the Gemara says, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah. It says in our Mishnah that a sick person, you can feed him if two doctors say that it's okay to feed him. So the Gemara makes an inference, al pi b'kiyin and al pi atzmo lo. It sounds like you have to have doctors. You can't do it al pi atzmo. You can't trust the person himself. So the Gemara says, and furthermore the Gemara says, al pi b'kiyin and al pi baki echad lo. It sounds like you have to do it through two experts and not through one. And again, Rabbi Yanai seemed to indicate rofe in singular. Even one doctor is enough. So the Gemara says, Hacha b'may askina, no, in our Mishnah, what are we talking about? Diyamar lo tzirichna. So the case over here is that he himself said he doesn't need any food. So the Gemara says, if that's the case, so that why not trust one doctor? Why does it say in our Mishnah that you need two doctors? So the Gemara says, lo, no, it's needed di'iko achrina bahadei, because there's not only does he say he doesn't need food, there's also another person, there's a doctor together with him who says that he does not need food. Di'amar lo tzarech, who says he doesn't need food. So in that case, ma'achilin oso al pi b'kiyin. In that case, if two doctors say that he requires it, even though he says he doesn't need it, and another doctor says he doesn't need it, we go by the two doctors. So the Gemara says, Pshita, but isn't that obvious? Safek nefashos, who? It's a Safek nefashos. This is a situation of life or death. The Safek nefashos lakel. Of course you're going to be lenient in a Safek nefashos. What's the chiddush? So the Gemara says, lo, no, it's needed. De'ika treyach rini bahadei. The Amri lo tzarech. There's actually two other people who say he doesn't need food. He says he doesn't need food. Two other individuals say he does not need food, but two doctors say he does need food, so it's 2 against 3. Now, even though Rav Safra says in general that 2 is the same thing as 100 and 100 is the same thing as 2. In other words, it doesn't really matter how many witnesses you have, let's say in a court case. When it's 2 against 100, it's just a stalemate. So who cares if it's 2 against 3? But but actually that statement that Rav Safra made is only by testimony. When you're testifying in court, it doesn't matter if you have 2 witnesses, 100 witnesses, they all cancel each other out. But when it comes to umdana, when you're trying to just establish a reality, a fact, like in this case, do we need to give this individual food or not? Basar deos azlinon. The truth is, we normally do follow the majority opinion. So here you have 2 against 3. Really, you normally would think to follow the 3. However, that's only true when it comes to establishing something that's relevant to a monetary situation. But over here, Safek Nefasha, so here's again, it's a question of life or death, and therefore, even though it's 2 against 3, we go by the 2 and we say that the individual should eat on Yom Kippur. So the Gemara continues further, but look at the Seif of the Mishnah. It says, it says if there are no experts, then you follow what the individual himself says. So Michlal de Reisha Damar Tzarech. that implies that in both cases he's saying he needs the food. In other words, even in the Reisha, the Chola is saying he needs the food, and it's just saying if you have doctors, you use the doctors. If you don't have doctors, then you go by him. So the Gemara says, there are actually words missing in the Mishnah. Here's how you really have to read the Mishnah. The real way to read the Mishnah is as follows. When is it true? If he says, I don't need, then you follow the doctors. But if he says that he requires the food, Ein sham bikiyin trei elachad do'amar lo tzarich. So if you don't have two experts, but you just have one that says he doesn't need the food, it's him against one person, so then machilin oso al piatzmo. Then you're allowed to feed him if it's him against the doctor, and he says he needs the food, so then you're allowed to give him the food on Yom Kippurim. According to this answer, it comes out that if he says he needs the food against two doctors, we actually wouldn't listen to him. But Mar Bar Ravashi says he argues with that. He says, Kol heichod amar tzarech ani, in any situation where the sick individual says, I need food, afilu ikameyo de amri lo tzarech, even if there's 100 doctors who say he does not need food, l'didei shaminan, we always listen to him, shenemar, like it says, leiv yodei amoras nafsho, again, the individual knows his own body. Gemara says, Tanan, again, we learned in our Mishnah, Ein sham bikiyin ma'achilin oso al piatzmo, it says that if there are no doctors, then we listen to him. So again, the Gemara makes an inference. Time with the leka bikiyin. It seems to be the reason is because you have no doctors. Ha'ika bikiyin lo, but if there are doctors, you don't listen to him. That seems to go against what we just said. So again, the Gemara says, no, hachi kamer, here's how you read the Mishnah, according to what we just said. Ba'med devarim amurim do amar lo tzarechani. When is it true in what situations do we listen to the doctors when he says he doesn't need? Avol amar tzarechani, but if he says that he needs, ein sham bikiyin klal, we do not consider the opinion at all of the doctors. If he says he needs food, we give him the food. Ma'achilin oso al piatzmo, we give him food according to his own understanding. Shenemar, like the pasuk says, leiv yodei amoras nafsho, a person knows himself. And the Gemara continues with a Mishnah, Misha achazo bulmus, somebody who has the disease called bulmus. And Rashi over here says, Misha achazo bulmus choli ha'ochez machmas ravon ein of chaos. This is a particular illness, makes a person very hungry, and also his eyes, it impairs his vision. V'hu mesukan lamos, he's also in danger of dying. When you feed the individual and he's able to see again, that's how you know that he's getting better. So the Mishnah continues, such a person, you can give him food even if it's not kosher food, until he regains his vision, then you know he's gotten better. Let's say a crazy dog bites somebody, you're not allowed to feed the person from the liver of this particular dog. Rashi over here explains, even though this was a practice of doctors to use this as a refuah for this particular situation, this is not considered a real refuah. It's not considered effective, and therefore we don't allow someone to use this remedy because it's not kosher. So in this particular case, the Mishnah is actually strict. Reb Masya ben Choresh matir. Now Reb Masya ben Choresh disagrees. He says you could use the liver of the dog as a refuah. Rashi says Reb Masya ben Choresh matir kasava refuah gemurahi. He says this is a refuah, and therefore no problem using it. And the Gemara continues, V'yod amar Rabbi Masya ben Choresh. Furthermore, Reb Masya ben Choresh says, Hachoshesh begrono. Let's say somebody is sick, he has an illness in his throat. Matilin lo sam besoch piv b'Shabbos. You're allowed to give him medicine inside of his mouth on Shabbos. Normally, we don't give medicine on Shabbos, but in this case, it's allowed. Mimneshu safek nefashos. Again, this is considered a life or death situation. V'chal safek nefashos doches haShabbos. Anytime you have a life or death situation, it's going to be doches Shabbos. You don't have to worry about violating Shabbos. And the Mishnah continues, Misha nafla olav mapolas. Let's say somebody, a building or something falls upon a person. Safek husham, safek eino sham. There's a doubt whether the person is even under the rubble or not. Safek chai, safek meis. There's a doubt whether the person is alive or dead. Safek kusi, safek Yisrael. You don't know if it's a kusi. You don't know if it's a Yisrael. You don't know if it's a Jew or a non-Jew. Mefachin olav esagal. You're allowed to clear the debris. Mitzau chai. Now, if you find that the person is alive, mefachin, you can continue to clear the debris even on Shabbos. But if you find that the person is dead, so then you have to leave it. You're not allowed to continue violating Shabbos in such a situation. And the Gemara says, Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught, Minayin hoyu yodin hei'iru einav. How do you know a person with bulmus? How do you know whether his vision has recovered? And the answer is, Misha yavchen bein tov l'ra. The answer is when he knows how to distinguish between good and bad. And Amar Abaye says over time, we're talking about the taste of a food. Rashi over here says, Amar Abaye v'time mishiodei lahavchen bein tam tav shel yofa l'tam tav shel ra. When the person eats and is able to distinguish between something that tastes good and something that tastes bad, that's how you know his vision has recovered. That's how you know he's improving from this particular illness. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Misha Achzo Bulmus. Again, somebody has this disease, Bulmus. Machilin Oso Hakal. You always give him the most lenient. If you're going to give him something that's not kosher, give him something that's the most lenient in terms of Aveira. So, for example, Tevelu Nevela, Machilin Oso Nevela. If you have Tevel in front and you have Nevela, you can use either one to feed the individual. You should give him Nevela that's more lenient. As Rashi over here says, when it comes to Tevel, you're talking about something that's Misa Bidei Shamayim. When you talk about Nevela, that's just a lav, so therefore it's not as strict. Tevelu Shvius, let's say you have, for example, Tevel, and you have produce from the Shemitah year. So then in that case, again, Shvius, you're supposed to do Shvius, as Rashi says, Shvius after the Zman Bior is just an Isser Aseh. Again, Tevel, that's Misa Bidei Shamayim. Tevelu Truma. Now, what happens if you have a situation of Tevel and Truma? So the Gemara says Tanoi, that's actually a Machlokas Tanoim. Which one is more lenient to Tanya, as we learned in a Brisa? Machilin oso Tevel, v'ein machilin oso Truma. The Tanna Kama says you give Tevel, not Truma. Ben Tema, Omer Ben Tema says Truma v'lo Tevel, better to give Truma than Tevel. And now the Gemara explains what exactly the case is. Amar Rabba says, if it's possible to give the individual chulin, and we'll take a look at Rashi in a moment, but if you can feed him something that's not truma or tevel, but you've separated everything properly and you're just going to give him chulin, everyone agrees you should separate the truma and you should give him the chulin. The whole machlokas is when it's impossible just to give him chulin, marsavar tevel chamur, marsavar truma chamura. One holds that tevel is more strict, the other one holds that truma is more strict. It's a machlokas, which one is considered more lenient. Marsavar tevel chamur, aval truma chazi l'kohen. One opinion says tevel is more strict because a truma, at least somebody could eat it. A kohen could eat it. Maybe this individual is not a kohen, but it's still more lenient in that sense. Marsavar truma chamur, the other one says no, truma is considered more strict. Aval tevel efshar l'sekune. But tevel is something that, at least in theory, it could be fixed. You can separate the trumas and maasros from tevel, and you can make it no longer tevel, so it's considered more lenient. Now Rashi over here explains, the case over here is you have tevel in front of you. Now if you take off the truma and there be enough chulin remaining to heal the individual, that's what you should do. You should separate the truma and give the individual, the sick individual, only the chulin. Everyone agrees, you give him the chulin. Don't give him tevel or truma. Chulin is for sure better. The whole machlokas is, let's say you have a situation where he needs to eat everything. So if you're going to separate truma, he's going to need to eat the chulin and the truma. So therefore, the Tanna Kama says better just give him the tevel than to separate it and give him chulin and truma. Ben Tema says no. Better to separate and give him the chulin and the truma. Don't give tevel. Like we said, one opinion holds tevel is more strict because even kohanim can't eat it. Truma has no heter. There's no way to make it permissible for this individual. When it comes to tevel, when it comes to tevel, that's something that in theory could be fixed. Become chulin, and then that can be fit for any individual. We'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis.